So tonight is different than most nights. Manashtana. We're not learning Horeb. We're learning Hirsch on Hanukkah. So he begins with, on the eve of the 25th of Kislev, you kindle Hanukkah lights in your home for 8 days with the greeting of the ever-increasing light. The memory of an old story of ancient times crosses the threshold of your mind. It's a very poetic view of it. That it's an old story from far in our history. Is it still the same old story? Do then the Jewish dead never die? Does the Jewish past never fade away? Asks Rav Hirsch. No, the Jewish dead do not die. One who has died for Jewry, nay, one who has lived for the cause of Yiddishkeit, can never die. In eternal gratitude, a people which knows how to value its past heroes cherishes their memory and their past history. Jewish history in all its grandeur accosts every coming generation, ever fresh, ever new, to remind, to warn, to comfort, and to elevate. And so when we look at the Hanukkah story, the Purim story, Pesach, all of the events, they all have a freshness to them. They don't end, as Rav Hirsch's point. And now, and he's talking now in 1836, and now, just this story, oh, that it were indeed old. If with its sorrow and its glory, it would, after 2,000 years, be so old to us that its sorrow might even seem incomprehensible to us, and its glory commonplace. Were that it really an ancient story? But Joshua preferred to be called Jason. Just as his younger brother, they succeeded one another as the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. Jason and his brother, who wanted to be called Menelaus instead of Hananiah. Now when Menelaus, together with the sons of Tobias, had in dispute with his brother over the office of high priest to yield to this violence, they approached King Antiochus and offered to throw off immediately their Jewish laws and customs, and to conduct themselves in accordance with the statutes and customs of the king of the Greeks.
There's always Jews like that, seems to be.
We're not talking about just Jews, we're talking about the Kohen Gadol. They therefore asked permission to erect a Greek college in the city of Yerushalayim. The study of Greek philosophy is what they were talking about. And when it was granted, they let their foreskins grow. There's a kind of operation in which the foreskins that are removed in the bris milah can in fact be drawn down and increased in size so they look like they did before the bris milah. This is something that goes on actually not only in Hirsch's time, but there's a movement in North America and the world, to do it. Because the act of circumcision by some is viewed as mutilation, and that the human body, as God made it, is perfect, and to have a bris milah is to cause damage to it. There's a very famous story about, I think it's Rabbi Akiva, when questioned by a Roman officer, was asked philosophically, didn't God make the world perfect? Right? Meaning, why would you destroy something God has created through a bris milah? And the rabbi told the Roman soldier, would you prefer to eat wheat or bread? Meaning that God creates wheat, and man is asked to turn that wheat into bread. And we know that we make brachas very often on what it is God gives us, and not the thing that we turn it into. Right? So, when we eat mizonos, right? we're not thanking God for the wheat. We're really thanking God for the finished product, which is the cake. Right? Same thing with challah, same thing with yayin, with wine, same thing with most foods. But we're expected to improve it. And this is actually a mashal for how God created the world. As Rabbi Roberts likes to say, God created the world in complete perfection for His purposes. So His purposes was that man should have the opportunity to perfect the world and thereby earn that which is so dear to Him, His mitzvahs, His world to come. So God made the world in what appears to be imperfection. You know, we have slush. What's the purpose of that? You know, we have mosquitoes. What's the purpose of that? To feed bats? I don't know. But in every part of the world, man can improve. Right? And it's not to say that God couldn't have done God's own desire, but God left the world to be finished. Right? You know, a parent can clean up their son's room, but it's actually better for the child to clean up his own room at a certain age for many reasons. Right? He has the satisfaction of achieving it, right? And he has the responsibility for it. Right? So, and this is what God did, and God willing, you know, we do this ourselves in our world. Sometimes we fall down on this, by the way, and we don't perfect the world, we make the world less perfect, and that's a tragedy when it happens. So as I said, they let their foreskins grow, so that even when naked they might appear quite similar to the Greeks, and thus, abandoning all customs of their forefathers, they adopted the habits of a foreign people. Is this a story of the past? In those days, rebels against the law came forward and tried to persuade the people thus: let us go and make a covenant with the people around us, the Greeks. For since we have separated ourselves from them, many misfortunes have befallen us. These words found favor in the eyes of the multitude, and several of the people declared themselves ready to set out and go to the king. The king granted them permission to introduce among themselves the customs of heathens. They erected a gymnasium in Jerusalem, not just a college, but a gymnasium in Jerusalem, after the Greek manner. They let their foreskins grow, and withdrawing from the sacred covenant, they united with the nations. They abandoned themselves completely to the practice of what was evil. Right? So this actually is a statement from Maccabees Part 1, which was a book that's not part of Tanakh, but is a historical book that...
You actually get one of those?
What? Yeah.
You actually get one.
That Rav Hirsch quotes. I actually have a copy here I can show you. It's been reprinted recently. Mashiza, can you hand me the books that are beside you, please? I think there's one more next to it. Mashiza, is there one more next to it, please?
What?
Is there one more book next to it? No. One. Keep going. There are so many books. Aha. Maybe this is it. The Hanukkah scroll, right? So Megillus Hanukkah, right? And I think this is based on the Maccabees.
Well.
Right? But we'll look at it later.
Yeah.
Okay. So they built for themselves a gymnasium.
No, when you say they, that's the Israelis or
the Jews,
the Jewish people,
the Hellenic Jews, the Jews who wanted to be like their neighbors. They saw the beauty of Greek culture. Greek culture was not something to be ignored. Greek culture was very beautiful, aesthetically. But, you know, there's a concept, and Hirsch will speak about it, we've learned it in other places, that Noah had 3 sons. Ham was cursed for seeing his father naked and perhaps doing terrible things to him. Shem and Japheth picked up a cloth and walked backwards over their father to cover his nakedness, Noah. Right? So they didn't look at him, they just walked backwards holding the cloth and covered him. And Noah cursed Shem, that he would be a servant to the other two. Japheth he described as beauty, right? And that there would be beauty within the tents of Shem. Right? Shem is the father of the Jewish people. Japheth is the father of Yavin, the Greek people. And Ham is the father of others that are viewed not as for their beauty, but for their sensuality. Yeah? And Shem is viewed for his spirituality and his intellect. So the Greek culture, Greek philosophy, the Greek aesthetic was something that one could understand why it would be so attractive. So he ends by saying, withdrawing themselves from the sacred covenant, they united with the nations and they abandoned themselves completely to the practice of what was evil. And he asks, is this a story of the past? He's asking in 1836. I think we could ask now, today, is this a story of the past, or do we see these things today? Jason, the brother of Onias, succeeding to the office of Kohen Gadol, high priest, arose and went to the king, Antiochus, and promised him 360 talents of silver, and in addition 80 talents from other revenues. Over and above this, he promised him another 150 talents if he should be authorized, that is to say Onias the Kohen Gadol, to exercise supreme power and to erect a college and an institution for physical exercises, and to grant the inhabitants of Jerusalem citizenship for Antioch. That is to say, the Jews would no longer be citizens of Israel, but of the nation of Antiochus, Antioch. When the king conceded this, and Jason had received the authority, he immediately set about to lead his countrymen astray, persuading them to adopt Hellenic customs. He abolished those very commendable practices which the former king had instituted for the Jews. He discarded the customs that were in accordance with the law and substituted for them unlawful usages. He even had the audacity to erect beneath the very Temple Mount a building intended for gymnastic sports and to constrain the finest youths to participate in exercises held there. And by the way, these exercises were all held with no clothes on.
Yeah, that's how the Greeks did that.
Because of the beauty of the human body, as they perceive.
Yeah.
Through the scandalous and criminal behavior of the godless and by no means high priestly Jason, the movements toward Hellenism and the impulse to adopt foreign practices became so strong that even the priests no longer concerned themselves with the service, the avoda of the altar.
Wow.
Instead, they became contemptuous of the temple, neglected the sacrifices, and ran out to participate in the illicit performances on the palastra, that's the gymnasium, at the proclamation and the announcing of the throwing of the discus. Their ancestral dignities they slighted, and Hellenic applause seemed to them the highest statement. These were Kohanim.
The time period of this is Second Temple or
Second Temple, about halfway through the Second Temple, about 200 years in the Second Temple. But it was just those people for whose sake they faced the greatest difficulties, whose way of life they strove to eagerly imitate, and to whom they wanted to become assimilated. It was precisely they who were their enemies, the avengers of their backsliding. For the sin against the divine laws is no small matter, a fact which only the ensuing epic reveals. Is this a story of the past? That is to say, the people that they wanted to be most alike, right? The people who, when they paid them off, said, yes, you can build your gymnasium, you can have your philosophy, you can have your Aristotelian views, you can have your Olympian athletics. You can be a citizen of our country. No problem. We take you in. Right? This is what went on, right? And then suddenly it was those people, right, who became most hostile. Hirsch asks, is that only in the past? We know for a fact, Hirsch lived in 1836. We know the tragedy of the period between the wars and the Weimar Republic in Germany. Germany was the most liberal European country, the country that was most accepting of its Jewish community. Intermarriage was at over 50%.
Wow.
And when the Weimar Republic ended, the Chancellor became Adolf Hitler.
Mm.
That nation which was most accepting was the one who devised the most horrible, what they called the final solution for the Jewish problem. It came not from the pogroms of Hungary or Poland or further Eastern Europe, but from the liberal thinkers, of Deutschland.
Mm.
It's a very tragic. And it's a lesson that Hirsch looks back and says, look what happened in Jerusalem. Look what happened at the time of the Hashmoneans. Right? And then he says, look what's happening now in my life. In 1836, the same thing is repeating. And he's not even looking forward another 100 years to this country that was so accepting of, appeared to be so accepting of Jews. If they were willing to be good Germans, what would happen? Is this then a story of the past? He asks. If religious decadence in the Jewish sphere fills you with grief and sorrow, if you are near despair of our future, if in fear you exclaim, has there ever been so gruesome a situation in Israel? This is what people were feeling, the religious community was feeling in the time of Hirsch, these feelings. Right? Then consider this story. See how once before, 2,000 years ago, Cohen Gedolim, high priests, men entrusted with that most sacred office of Jewry, with the highest religious office, were themselves the first to go and betray God and His holy law, to woo the favor of kings by religious treachery, seducing the Jewish nation and its youth. They vied with the well-to-do and the educated of their people in contempt of the divine laws of the and Jewish morals, in honoring and adopting un-Jewish ways and un-Jewish culture. See how already thousands of years ago the alluring light of culture and political advantage in the shape of civic rights had been employed by Israel's seducers to tempt them to revolt against God and His holy word. Yet observe how this epoch of betrayal and revolt was left behind, and how it was succeeded by centuries and millennia of faithfulness, of devotion, of self-sacrifice for God and Judaism, and learn from this to look to the future with confidence. It says, it was very dark now, in 1836. The description of intermarriage in North America is sometimes described as a Holocaust today, in our time. That we're losing more people faster through marrying out and through assimilation than we lost during the 40s.
Wow.
40s, yeah? Hirsch is saying, you think it's bad in my time? In the mid-1800s? Don't worry. Look at this time. It was much worse, and the results, in the end, were that we had a stronger people that were able to survive even the destruction of the temple, and go on. For you must note that this revolt, of which voices of the past have just given an account, this revolt was not one provoked from without. It was not the consequence of Antiochus's wild attack on Judaism. This revolt of Jewish teachers of God's law and the upper classes of society in Judea was voluntary. It preceded the frenzy of the king. So the king didn't start upset with Judea. Everything was going quite smoothly.
These people wanted to do it, right?
It was, strictly speaking, the actual cause, the real origin of the subsequent fanatical anti-Jewish outbreak. This is so important what I'm about to say. Not in his wildest dreams would it have occurred to Antiochus to convert Jews from Judaism to Greek culture. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought, I'm moving into Israel and I'm going to make them into Greeks. Never occurred to him. We know how stubborn they are. We know who they are. Right? But by the way, politically, they'll allow us to rule. Right? They'll pay taxes. Right? They'll be good citizens of Greece. Right? Our religion, they don't have to be part of it. They have to pay their taxes. They have to be loyal subjects, politically. Right? What do we care about their culture? It's not an issue. Right? That was his view. Later he changed his mind. Right? Later he had a frenzy. It was, strictly speaking, the actual cause, the real origin of the subsequent fanatical anti-Jewish outbreak. Not in his wildest dreams would it have occurred to Antiochus to convert Jews from Judaism to Greek culture, had not Jews and priests of Jewry disclosed to him that Judaism no longer held the first place in their heart, and that they were only waiting for the royal command to place Zeus on the altar of the Eternal, and that at the same time, the common people, the lower classes, could easily be lured into the other camp, or made to suffer as the established Jewish spirit
move to main pages.
Yeah. Good. Or made to suffer martyrdom if they refused. Right? Most would agree. Most would be persuaded. After all, who's persuading them? Their high priests.
Yeah, that's
the Kohanim.
Why would the Kohen Gadol do this? I don't.
Because they were attracted to it.
He wasn't a very good Kohen Gadol. Doesn't he appreciate the fact that he's got the highest job? I mean, I don't know how a Kohen Gadol should be an incredibly religious man. Yet well, in this case, they were corrupt. He didn't care.
Unfortunately, the history in the Second Temple was that the role of Kohen Gadol became a political office that was bought and sold. And
even prior to the Hellenist issue?
Prior to the outbreak of the war.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
once Israel had lost its sovereignty, right, then this whole process became very corrupt. And it's an interesting... I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I will try to find them for you before Shabbos. But when you look at the history of the Kohanim, they served, I think, for an average of 40 years as Kohen Gadol in the First Temple. Don't have the exact number. In the Second Temple, during the 400 years, there were literally, I think, more than 100, maybe. And one Kohen Gadol, Shimon Shimon the Righteous, served for about 80 years by himself. Right.
So you got a hell of a lot of
roughly 300 years.
Yeah.
Right. And so it means that
you had a lot of guys going in and out.
Often serving for 1 year.
Right.
Why? Because for Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, to enter into the Kadosh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies, alone with God, if he was not of a pure nature, remember the week before he hadn't slept. Right, the week before they were quizzing him, to keep him awake so that he would, for many reasons, stay sharp, so he wouldn't have admission, that he would be pure when he entered. But if he entered, and the reason he was there was somehow for his own covet, for his own honor, right, then he would perish there and then on the spot.
Wow.
Only if he was there as a pure and, again I use this phrase reluctantly, clear channel for the blessings of God to go through him and into the nation, would he survive. If he was impure, he would burn from within. Right? And of course we know that he had a rope tied onto him, and that if he didn't survive, nobody could go in and get him. They would pull the rope and drag him out. In the case of the Second Temple, this happened very frequently.
So they have like a whole bunch of guys ready, go pull him out.
Well, the curious thing, which is a whole sheer in itself, is if you know this is the fact, why would you be willing to pay money in order to die? You're going to be Kohen Gadol. You're not going to be Kohen Gadol for 2 years. You're going to be Kohen Gadol until Yom Kippur. And then you're going to be dead Kohen Gadol. And another one will replace you by the officer. What is it about, right? It's a separate sheer to think about, that hundreds of people were willing to allow this to happen, just to have them that role.
Amazing.
But the point that he's making here is that when people of such great authority, great religious authority, were to convince the masses that it's appropriate to follow another way, then those that are less educated,
just follow it,
would say, we've trusted these people. We will continue to trust them. They said that's what we should do. That's what we should do. And those who are stubborn and say, wait a second, I'm a critical thinker. I may not be Kohen Gadol, but listen, I know that we don't erase and don't enlarge the Torah. What the Torah that we got from Moshe Rabbeinu, that's our Torah. Those people, well, we do away with them. They can become martyrs. That was the theory behind it. So the small group that was willing to fight back, destroy them, the rest will go along with the program. Jewry was persecuted, but everyone believed that Judaism was everlasting. It required 19th century priests and disciples to set the spectacle of disloyal Jews before the eyes of princes and people. Right? Those are the priests of his time. He's talking about Reform Judaism here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before any statesman conceived the idea of reforming Jewry by means of decrees and legal measures, it was first... I didn't finish the sentence, so let me read the sentence again. It required 19th century priests and disciples, he doesn't want to call them rabbis, to set the spectacle of disloyal Jews before the eyes of princes and people. Before any statesman conceived of the idea of reforming Jewry by means of decrees and legal measures, it is only natural to respect yourself, respect your past, respect your own sanctuary, and you will see that whenever opinion is held of you, whatever opinion is held of you, whether you are regarded with favor or with disfavor, respect will not be denied you. So that people can hate you, but they will still respect you. Which, by the way, is actually the history of Judaism.
Yeah.
You can actually see it even in anti-Semitic humor. Anti-Semitic humor never portrays the Jew as a fool.
Yeah.
He may portray him as a thief. He may portray him as unscrupulous. He will never portray him as a fool. Right? Most jokes about nationalities portray them as fools, if you think about it. But respect will never be denied you. But if you do not respect yourself, if you look contemptuously on the tombs of your ancestors, if you no longer consider your sanctuary worthy of respect, even of recognition, how can you demand that a stranger shall respect you, or respect your fathers? You may find many things in the world, but for respect you will beg for it in vain. We see this so much. He says this is the story of his life today in Germany in 1836, when he's confronted with Reform Judaism, which pays no respect to the traditions of their fathers, and says we have to change it so that it fits into the world in which we're living today. But we even see this when we now have a state, that if our state doesn't demand respect, how can we expect our allies and our friends to demand respect for Israel? If Israel itself doesn't demand it. Its friends can't ask for more than it wants for itself. What was the mistake made by these men of progress, men of culture, priests of reform, the political traffickers in religion of the time of Antiochus in Judea? Listen to the illuminating tale of the Hanukkah lights. The renegade sons of Judea had gone to such lengths that the Greeks themselves finally dishonored the divine sanctuary by using it as a temple of Zeus. They had profaned all the oil intended for the sacred lamp of God. The victorious Hasmoneans found but one small crucible cruse unconsecrated, and it was enough for only how long?
The 8 days.
No.
Oh, I mean, one day.
1 day.
Yeah, one day. Yeah, of course.
But in this one cruise of oil...
That was the one that was certified. It was sealed still, right?
That's right.
But they had lots of other oil, but it was all screwed up oil.
That's right. Right, the seals were broken.
Yeah.
Right. But in this one cruise of oil was revealed the miraculous salvation of divine power. For 8 days the lamp was tended with it until fresh and pure oil could be prepared. Though they rage against Jewry with fanatical frenzy, Though right and left thousands of hundreds of thousands fall away in betrayal of Jewry, nevertheless, so long as they have not trampled out the existence, the last spark of Judaism in the heart of the last Jew, in the last Jewish village, we short-sighted mortals may quiver and tremble. But he that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. That's from Tehillim, the 2nd chapter, verse 4. One single pure spark, loyally treasured in but one single Jewish heart, is sufficient for God to set aflame once more the whole spirit of Judaism. It's so interesting. In this terrible book that was written by the leader of the German people during the Nazis, his name should be erased, Adolf Hitler, Maximum. He said, if one Jewish boy should survive, we have failed.
Really? That he wrote down?
That's what he wrote.
Right.
Hirsch, more than 100 years before, writes, one single pure spark, loyally treasured in but one Jewish heart, is sufficient for God to set aflame once more the whole spirit of Judaism. That is to say, his analysis was correct. Because that spark is eternal and cannot be destroyed. And if all the oil, if all the forces that were to have preserved the light of the God in Israel were to be misused for the light of paganism, even then one little cruse of oil, one heart which in a forgotten hidden corner imprinted the high priest's seal, has faithfully remained untouched and undefiled. This one cruse is sufficient to become the salvation of the entire sanctuary when the right time and hour has come. And even though all countries were bowed in obeisance to Antiochus, if every man forsook the land of his fathers and assented to the king's command, even then I and my sons and brothers will not forsake the laws of our fathers. Thus spoke the loyal Hasmoneans, the Maccabees. Heart of one single hero advanced in years, and Israel's sanctuary was saved. He's talking to one person, the father, Mattisyan.
He's the one that's the father of the Maccabees. It's his sons that did all the warring. Right.
But he was the leader.
It
was his determination. Right?
Is that Judah Maccabee? Is that his name?
He's one of the sons.
He's one of his sons.
One of his sons. He was, probably the most famous son.
Okay.
Therefore, go and kindle your light at the festival of the Maccabees. To kindle it in your synagogue, in your temple, is not enough. The precept of Hanukkah is in your own home. There shall be light for you and for your house. Of what avail is it to us if we sing praises in our houses of worship, if in the temples we call ourselves Jews, in monetary access of devotion, while our homes are un-Jewish? We do not harbor in our homes the light of the Jewish spirit. Our salvation has not issued from the temples in the past, nor will it now. The deliverance will come from the home. How good are the sermons of your preachers, how well your cantors, your chazans sing. This makes no difference. The important thing is how your children and babies prattle, whether the Jewish spirit shines in them, whether the Jewish sap flows in their veins, whether the Jewish way of life in their education depend the victory and deliverance, not on the temple. The light of the temple, it was the very high priests of Judaism themselves who betrayed it. The light of Mattathias in his village becomes the salvation. Do therefore kindle your light in your own home. And of course the mitzvah, right, is to kindle in your own home. If you're staying temporarily at somebody's house, maybe over Shabbos, right, you would come early before Shabbos in time to kindle in their home. But let's say you're traveling and your wife is at home. Who has the responsibility to light? Right? Normally men light. The responsibility is to light in your home. So your wife would light your candles for you, and you would be fulfilled with the knowledge that she lit. You don't need to light in your hotel room in that situation. It's even a question whether you should in that situation. You know, there's I'm just trying to tell a little Hanukkah story. That for Jews, the role of candles is very important. Let me just mark my place here.
Put the paper in between.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The role of candles plays a very important role for us. Right? How so? We know that the Kohen Gadol, during the day, they would clean the menorah. Right?
That was his job.
The command was to Aaron to do it. Right? That all of the other leaders of the Shavits, of the tribes, brought very special gifts, and we read about those gifts each morning during Hanukkah. But Aaron was not asked to bring any gifts. And we're told by our sages that this pained Aaron, the high priest. Why did the princes of all the other tribes bring? And God said, your portion, as the head of the tribe of Levi, right, your portion is even greater. What is your portion? Right? Your portion is to clean the menorah and to relight it each day. Right? That the light, and we know that it was lit during the day, and that the windows of the Beis Hamikdash were made in the reverse of other windows. Most in olden times, windows used to funnel light into a place, right? So the goal was to bring the light from the sun into the building. Right? From the Beis Hamikdash, it was the reverse. The windows were built in the opposite way. That the light of the menorah would flow out and fill the world. Right? So they were built in the opposite direction. This menorah was lit by the holiest people in the community. The Kohen Gadol, the Kohanim, would light the menorah. They would light it in the daytime. And they couldn't just reach and light it, right? They had to climb up steps because it was very high. They had steps they would walk up and light it. We have another kind of candle that we light. We light it every week. Right? Comes sunset on Shabbos. Just the time that the light is leaving the sky. Not before it's dark, but during dusk. Right? In our homes, usually it's our wives, we'll light Shabbos candles. Maybe behind, we draw the curtains, we have the warmth of Shabbos, the Oneg Shabbos, the beauty of the light of Shabbos, right? Usually it's at the table height. In our house it's like at a bookcase height, but there's no steps required, right? And we light it as the sun is setting. Right? And then we have a very strange light, right? The light of the menorah. How high? I'll ask Moshe Yitzchak if he knows. Moshe Yitzchak. What is the lowest height the menorah can be? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I don't know if there is a minimum.
It's 3 tefachim. This high, right? So 1, 2, 3. This high from the ground, not from the table, from the ground. Right? And do we put it behind curtains? No. In many places, in Israel, you'll see many places
you put it at the door, a special
light
container.
it outside. In our house, if you can see, look behind you through the curtain, you'll see Moshe Yitzchak's menorah is outside.
Oh, you have one outside?
Yeah, there's one outside, and then there's one in the window here.
Oh, wow.
Mine is in the window here. He lights outside.
That's nice.
That's how he does it. Right? Because we want...
It doesn't get blown up by the wind?
It's in a box, in a glass box.
Oh, wow.
It's specially built. I'll show it to you later.
Okay.
Because what is the purpose of it? It's a very important question. The purpose of it is not for our homes. The purpose is that, and when do we light it? Right? Very important, right? We light it after dark, right? The only exception to that, of course, is Erev Shabbos, when we have to light it before we light Shabbos candles, because we can't light candles during Shabbos, right? So we light it before. But every other day, right, we always light the Hanukkah menorah when we light it after it's dark outside, completely dark, right? 3 stars, right? That's when we light it. So, what's the purpose of it? Right? And who can light it is another question. The most ordinary person can light it, not the Kohen Gadol, not even the Baal Bayis. Right? You know, we know children light Hanukkah candles. Right? Other members of the family can light Hanukkah candles. Right? Some hold that everybody in the house should light a menorah. Right? What did it mean when God said to your portion is greater? He was talking not just about the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. He was actually talking about the menorah that you lit tonight. The one that I lit, that Moshe lit, that all of us lit tonight. It may be, and we're supposed to light, let me just add one thing, we're supposed to light it during the time people are still on the street.
Did they see it?
Yeah. You know, sometimes people will light a menorah at 2 in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's when they got home, and then that's, you know, what they did. And it's very late to do it. It's probably too late to do it, but you do it anyway, hoping one person will come by and see it, and it will move them. Yeah? And there's an idea that this very humble light, not that you have to reach up for, not behind closed doors on beautiful long candlesticks, humble light, right? In the window, that a Jew living in Germany in 1836 or living in North America today, who is very distant from Yiddishkeit, will see that candle, that menorah, and say, I remember that. I remember that. And the truth is that Hanukkah may be the most popular festival among Jews in the world. Right? And more than that, you should know that to fulfill the laws of the menorah of Hanukkah, right, you need to light 1 candle each day, not 1 more candle, just 1 candle each day. One person light 1 candle each day, a total of 8 candles for the whole holiday. You fulfilled the mitzvah. If you want to be Mehadrin, that is to say, bring it to a higher level, right? Then every member of the family might light 1 candle each day. Yeah? Family of 3, each person lights 1, 3 candles are lit each day. That's all. Mehadrin, minha Mehadrin, as they say, great mitzvah, even greater, you know, more shining, right, would be to light an additional candle for each day. This would be beyond any requirement. It would be standard. Now, there are people who, when Sukkot come, spend $2,500 on an esrog.
Wow.
Because they want to have the
the ultimate esrog.
I don't. Can't afford it. Don't do it. But I don't know anybody, Orthodox, Hasidic, Sephardi, Ashkenaz, Yeke, conservative reform, unaffiliated. I don't know any Jew who lights 1 candle a night.
Well, it goes the whole line.
I don't know one Jew who has each member of his family light 1 candle per night. Right? For some reason, this mitzvah, this particular mitzvah, uniquely, every Jew, regardless of his denomination, fulfills it way beyond the requirement. Mahadrin minha mahadrin. You know, kosher beyond kosher. Right? is what it's saying. Why is it? Right? I think when we look at the story and we see that the Greeks had destroyed the seals on all the oil. We say, it's a problem. What was the solution? The truth of the matter is that by Jewish law, there was no problem with using that oil.
Really?
No problem. There's a concept in the Torah, in the law, that if the nation itself is impure, then they don't have to bring a pure korban. If the whole nation is that way. And the nation was. They've been fighting battles, they've been touched by Tumas Mace, by the Tumah of death. Right? So they could have lit it. Right? But they decided no. And when they decided no, God decided yes.
Mm-hmm.
They said, we're only going to use the pure oil. Right? That will be it. Right? That's what we're going to lit. Even though they could have lit others. And by the way, the miracle that we celebrate, we make such a big deal out of, leaves a lot of questions. Right? The Western lamp in the menorah burned continuously. When all the other lamps, there's 6 lamps, right? Not 8, 6 lamps, right? When all 5 of them went out, they all had the equal amount of oil. The Western lamp, the Ner HaMa'aravi, the light of the West, right, continued burning. It was a miracle. It happened every day in the Beis HaMikdash, the first Beis HaMikdash, and the second one until the death of Shimon HaTzadik, which was about roughly, it was close to the Hanukkah revolt. It was within 2 generations of the Hanukkah revolt. So, wait a second. What's the big deal about this? That candle never went out. Mm-hmm. Right? We don't have a big holiday about that. More than that, Hanina ben Doza, who is a sage from the time of the Gemara, one day, it was a Friday afternoon, and his daughter came and said, Tati, it's too late to buy, and we don't have any oil for Shabbos. Hanina ben Doza was not a wealthy man. What are we going to do for Ner Shabbos? Hanina ben Doza said, he who has made it possible for oil to burn will make vinegar burn. Put vinegar in light vinegar. That's what it says. Right?
Okay.
And so she did this. Now, Hanina ben Doza was a unique man. Right? It's said that there's a concept that God preserved Yiddishkeit because of Hanina ben Doza.
Boy. Right?
And Hanina ben Doza lived from Shabbos to Shabbos on a tiny bit of food, a very small amount of food. It was virtually a fast. The world rested on his shoulders.
Oy.
So, come Shabbos, she lit the vinegar, and it burned.
And it worked.
Now, I don't know, maybe I'm missing it, but I don't think there's any Hag Hanina ben Doza's Bat Hanina ben Doza for a holiday for the daughter of Hanina ben Doza lighting oil, lighting vinegar, right? Yeah. Which is even more of a miracle than the oil in a way. So what's the big deal with the oil? I mean, after all, the victory of the Maccabees, of this small band of less than 5,000 at their tops, untrained priests and their families and friends, fighting against the world's superpower. Right? And we don't make a big deal about this victory. We make a big deal about the oil. It's not that we don't know about it. We know about it. And as I pointed out before, there is a statue at West Point to Yehuda Maccabee, who was the founder of the concept of guerrilla warfare. It wasn't Che Guevara. It was Yehuda Maccabee.
Founder of guerrilla warfare.
Because he was the one who knew how to hit and run against great armies, right, and defeat huge armies. Right? His tactics were remarkable. But, Hashem was fighting on their behalf as well throughout. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen. But we don't make a big deal about that. We seem to, we don't have, we should have little soldiers, in the window. It's an amazing victory, what I mean. We don't. So why the oil? Rabbi Breitowitz uses the phrase that the oil was God's calling card that he left behind. Right? In case you should think that the Maccabees were such great soldiers as time passed, and that was the reason for the victory, I'm going to do one other miracle for you. Rabbi Weinberg describes it as, if you buy a van for your wife, because she needs it for carpool, you know, and it's functional. What's the big deal? She needed it. You both agreed you needed it. The budget was there, right? So there's no big celebration to it. It's, you know, I bought a wiring blender to to mix things. I bought a van to bring people to school. It's not a luxury vehicle. But what if you take the van and you leave a special gift, something that she cares about a great deal, on the dashboard, and you leave a note with it? It says, you know, I hope this makes the process of carpool easier for you, and I hope we got exactly what you wanted in the van in order to accomplish this, right? We're thinking about you when we purchase, right? Suddenly the van takes on a new meaning.
Yeah, sure.
So this is what the lights are, right? The Jews didn't know if after all the averas that had been committed, would God forsake them? He was entitled to, right? You know, could he have let us lose the war? Actually, no. He couldn't have let us lose the war because we're part of his plan. Right? So winning the war, making sure we won the war, in a sense, fulfills his needs as well as ours for history. And is not a statement about our great merit. The reason we celebrate the oil is it's God's way of putting the chocolate kiss on the dashboard. You know, God's way of leaving the note to say, yes, I'm there with you. Through this darkness that you've been through, I am there. I will be there with you in darkness in the future. A few will struggle. A light will be lit. And so the gift of Aaron at this moment, right, is exactly that. It's greater than the other portions. What's greater about it is when you light that candle, when you light that wick, right, you're remembering a closeness that God has promised us to this day, right, to the time of Shimson Rapheal Hirsch, to our time, and to the Jew who, just as in the Hellenic times, and just in the times of the life of Shimson Rapheal Hirsch, and in our times, is estranged and has found himself attracted by things other than Yiddishkeit, has disdained Yiddishkeit as something primitive or not so good. Look and see the candle and remember something positive. And maybe it'll be the beginning of his tshuva, of his turn, right? Because he saw that lowly candle in the window, 3 feet above the ground, lit in the total darkness. Because we know, what does it take to dispel a great deal of darkness? A very small light. If your whole house is dark, and you're bumping into things, and you turn on, you light one candle, suddenly the room is illuminated. Right? This is the promise of Hanukkah. Right? That the light of shame, the light of the son of Noah of shame, will become dominant, right? And that God will be one, His name will be one, and that Yafas, this beautiful aesthetic of Yavin, right, will become incorporated into shame, secondary to the intellect and to the spirituality of shame, but as part of it. There was no more beautiful building than the Beis Mikdash. It was a beautiful building. It was admired everywhere. Right? It had some of the qualities of Yavas. The songs of the Levium, unmatched for beauty. many things. There was many aesthetics of the temple period. They were very beautiful, and that we, in fact, had the instincts of Yafas had come into the tent of shame for that purpose. Right? So this should happen soon, that the light of the menorah, right, before it ends this year, should become the light of Mashiach.
Hmm.
I'm going to end with one story about my son Moshe Yitzchak.
Okay.
For Hanukkah, right? Because it's a proper ending. So when Moshe Yitzchak was just, I think, 4 years old, he came home and he said to me, Tati, do you know what happens to the lights of Hanukkah? Kind of curious question.
Yeah.
Right? This was on the last night of Hanukkah.
Mm-hmm.
8 candles burning. 9 with the shaman. He said, Tati, do you know what happens to the lights of Hanukkah after Hanukkah? I said, no, Moshe Yitzchak. What happens? He said, I'll tell you. Hashem gathers all the lights of Hanukkah together, right? And he saves it to give to Mashiach when the time comes. Right? That this light of Hanukkah, right, will illuminate the whole world.
Hmm.
Right, when the time comes. That all the lights that we light go to that purpose. I called this school. I said, "Have you guys talking about Mashiach and lights and Hanukkah?" I said, "No." I told him what Moshe Yitzchak said. I said, "You know, we hold that Nevuah, right, is in the hands of fools and children today. Right? And God willing, it's a nevuah that will see this light revealed sooner than later. We all should have a Freilich Hanukkah, Hanukkah Sameach, the warmth of Hanukkah in the middle of the darkness of winter, and the light of Hanukkah in the middle of the darkness of winter should illuminate our lives, should warm our homes for the whole year."